You know what I love? I love me a batshit crazy woman. I'm here for it. So I've been reading a lot of books lately with women that are just they're not girls. They're not they're not here to be your friend and they're not here to teach you any like good things in life. So I'm gonna tell you guys about them because they're psychotic and I feel like everyone should read these books. So the first book is Yesteryear by Caro Burke. I actually thought that this book was just gonna be like all the hype and it's not gonna be actually good. I was wrong. I listened to the audiobook and it was hilarious. I just feel like it's a really good satire on trad wife influencers and like being careful what you wish for. So this woman is like a trad wife influencer. She acts like she does everything in her house by herself. She doesn't really like love her kids, but she has them because that's what trad wives do. And she kind of tricks her husband into becoming like a farmer, a rancher, because he's actually useless. He just has a lot of money. And she like flashes back into the past of like how she got to where she is, which is on the backs of the freedom that women have fought for like literally 100 years. And it's the only reason she can be an influencer, which I think is really ironic. And then there also is a flashback into a time point where she like is living on the prairie, like 1800s, like real trad wife vibes. And she's like, I don't belong here. And she has no idea how she got there. She doesn't even recognize like the people there for the most part. And it's very fascinating. I was wondering why like people were hyping it up so much. And then I got to like the last 25% and it was batshit crazy, guys. Like I was not expecting that. I was so taken aback and I found it quite funny. And I think the audiobook was really good. The narrator was like very, very funny. She had really good intonation and she kept me like captivated. I don't think I would have read it if it was like an actual book. It was an actual book, Samia. It is a book. I wouldn't have read it like as a physical copy book. I think listening to it was the only way I was going to get through it. So the next book is Hooked, which explores a parasocial relationship between two women. There's one woman, Shoko, who is like a blogger. She is like a messy housewife blogger. So she like doesn't cook traditional meals. She doesn't do all the traditional things that are expected of like Japanese housewives. And like she has somewhat of a following from it. She's like, my husband doesn't care that I, don't make everything from scratch and everything isn't like super healthy, yada yada yada. And this other woman, Eriko, she seemingly is like perfect. She's very beautiful. She eats well. She like it has an ideal kind of life. She has a really good job, but she's like super lonely. She can't find a man. She can't make friends with women, and she blames it on everybody but herself. But it's really like her fault. She starts obsessing over Shoko and like basically finds her through her blog and like kind of starts stalking her and wants to be best friends with her and creates this idealized version of who Shoko should be and does not like that it doesn't compare to who Shoko actually is as a real person. And like the book is called, it's like a novel of obsession, and it really is. It's such a toxic relationship between the two, and Eriko especially, like homegirl really needs therapy. But I think it's a fascinating exploration of like how we expect people to behave and act, and kind of comes down to like don't meet your heroes because you're going to be disappointed in some way, shape, or form. The next book I also actually read on audiobook. Isn't it shocking how much audiobook stuff I'm reading when I don't like audiobooks? I know, fake as fuck. So I listened to Yellowface by R.F. Kuang because I was like, you know what, why not? Let's just listen to more white women being crazy and doing crazy girl things. This is like the most gaslighty like book I've listened to, and I don't think I could have read this as a physical copy either. I think listening to it was the only way I could do it. So you have this woman, this white woman, who is jealous of her Asian author friend who is seemingly amazing and successful and has it going on and everything is going on for her. And through a weird freak accident, like her friend dies and she steals her friend's manuscript for the new book she was writing and, makes it her own. And it was such a fascinating exploration of like, now this is not like the whole publishing industry, but like in some instances I do wonder, I'm like, how are books made successful? How are they decided that they're going to be it? And I think it was a very fascinating exploration from R.F. Kuang of like how the publishing industry works, what the standard is for white women versus like women of color especially, and like what they should be writing and stuff, because it feels like, here especially. So like the white woman in this book, she's like, oh, woe is me, I'm white, no one will ever like what I write because like I'm not diverse enough or whatever, which I think is really ironic. So she steals this book, appropriates it as her own, lies blatantly about it, gets caught lying, and still somehow seems to kind of like get out of it sort of okay. But it's so interesting because she gaslights herself the entire time about like it always comes back to, I'm like, girl, you stole this book. Like, of course bad things are gonna happen to you. She's like, this book is mine. Like I edited it. I made it what it was today. And I was like, but you stole it. Like you stole it from a dead woman too, which is like crazy to me. And you think it's like justifiable. And what's even more alarming is, sure, this woman is crazy, but all the people that like back her up, support her, and like think her behavior is kind of okay was also really alarming. The next book is Immaculate Conception by Ling Huang. I also listened to this on audiobook. I know, guys. I know. It's crazy. I'm like audiobooking it so much lately. It's weird. So this story is about Enka, who is friends with Mathilde, and they're both like art students, and Matilda is basically kind of like a art prodigy, like especially in a world where technology is advancing and art is becoming like harder to make unique and creative. She is like a prodigy, and Enka is like from the get-go one extremely jealous of her, but also like kind of obsessed with her. Like she really wants to be her friend, and she places herself in a way where like she kind of becomes a person who takes care of Mathilde when Mathilde like falls apart, because Mathilde has a lot of trauma, which is kind of where her art stems from. And this relationship is set in the backdrop of a world where like technology is advancing. So there's like new art forms coming out where like people are using tech to like enhance art and stuff. So there's a whole new field of art that uses like computers and other things like that to, I guess make it like more artistic. But anyways, essentially there's a technology where you can like merge into the mind of another person and like basically become them. And long story short, like Enka uses that to basically become Mathilde. Like she's so jealous and so obsessed with her that she just wants to become her. And it's so weird because it violates so many things, because like not everything is very consensual here, and there's a lot of exploitation, which I think is also fascinating. And Mathilde's like she's white, but like even then, like the way that Enka is so obsessed with her and like feels the need to be her savior, but at the same time is constantly holding her on such a high pedestal. Again, kind of like what Eriko does with Shoko and Hook, that she like can't imagine being a better artist than Mathilde, and that kind of gets in the way of her artful growth, right? Of her becoming like a good artist and stuff. It starts out really slow, I would say. Like the first third, I was kind of like, I don't know if this is for me. But I was really there for the dystopia. The way Enka talks about Mathilde, you get like this kind of creepy, eerie feeling, and you're like, I feel like she's like really weirdly codependent with her. And I feel like I was very deeply disturbed by the book. It wasn't like, I think I would have liked a little bit more of the sci-fi exploration, the dystopian part of like the book and all the technology that was being used. But I do think it was a very interesting exploration of like how what we consider like one consent, but also what we consider like being a good friend is, It feels like Inca did not want Matilda to heal, and like she didn't want her to not be dependent on her. And last but certainly not least is Sublimation, which just came out. It's kind of like Severance, except if you basically immigrate anywhere, if you aren't sure of it and you don't have certainty, you leave a version of yourself, like basically like a clone of yourself in the previous country. So it follows Rose and So Young, who like when they were little, when they were 10, they like instance, that's what they call it. And Rose grows up in the US with her instance mother, and So Young grows up in Korea. And when their grandfather like dies, he requests that she's like at the funeral, so Rose comes back, and you can reintegrate with your instance if you touch them. And like So Young non-consensually reintegrates with Rose, and it explores kind of like the different parts of your personality. And I think it's very fascinating because I love the multiverse, and I'm like, what would happen if there was like another version of me? Like what would she be doing? Or like if I had made decisions differently, would I have a different life? And they kind of get to see that in real time, right? They get to see a version of themselves that was raised in the US and had a different life, and then a version of themselves that lives in Korea and has been raised in Korea, but they're so fascinated by each other because they still are like one. Her friend YJ slash Yujin, who also instanced when he was older, is also involved. And it becomes really crazy because Yujin works for like the company that like creates merge break, which is like a device you wear so that you don't instance I'm sorry, so that you don't reintegrate with people. Eugen works at Merge Break, where they make a device where if your instance, you don't reintegrate with your instance. You wear this device, and like if you touch each other, you should be fine. Like it's like 98% effective or something like that. So it's really really cool the way they like follow these characters, and it's very confusing because it's written in second person. So when you're reading it, it's like you're reading Rose's POV, but it's like you did this, you did that, and I feel like it was very trippy to read. I actually listened to some of it and read some of it, and I think listening to it was very interesting later on when the characters like reintegrate and other things happen, because in the book the way it's written is very interesting, and hearing it in audio was like very jarring, and I think like kind of immersive. I really liked it a lot. Let me know if you guys have a recommendation for me that kind of fits this vibe, because I'm on a roll here. Anyways, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.